Hey everyone, Tiger here, your super DDO geek nerd dork, and we are going to continue with the hardcore advice how-to video series that I'm working on. This particular one, we are going to start off right away with what are the best race and class for the Hardcore League event. This is a very sort of debated topic, and many people have wild opinions on this. I will give you my opinion on what I think. Keep in mind, as Guildmaster of Death Smile, I got to meet hundreds of DDO players, and every day, when we do the guild and I clean out more than once a day, I will clean out the dead from the Land of Lost Souls because we need the guild space. At the peak, when the event starts, the first couple weeks, the way things have been in the past, I at Death Smile was running at capacity. The guild holds 1,000 players. That first week we had 950 some odd, maybe 960 unique accounts. That means that virtually no one had an alt, and we had almost 1,000 players. And so as a result of this, people are dying constantly. It's a lot of people. And so I get to notice who is winding up in the list of the dead. And then I also see the character classes that are excelling, who is surviving, who's doing really well, what classes show up first with the rewards on the ship. Everybody who gets the rewards usually parades them around the top deck of the ship, brings them down to the cargo hold. So I have got to see a lot of things over the course of the 3 hardcore seasons that I GM'd Death Smile in. And then also I would say that on my own trek running, I came up with my baby bear build for Favor, and I do my Enlightened Spirit for Reaper. But I also got to run and see a lot of great classes and race combinations of things that I think work really, really well. I may actually do a separate video that sort of expands on this idea and put it under its own heading. That way, rather than watching this entire series, somebody who's looking for this information, if they want it right away, they can go for that. But so in the game that I'm playing here, I made a Drow and it's a Warlock. And I've got to tell you that if your goal is Favor, of the races, I picked the worst. I mean, Drow is arguably the worst race in DDO. They were put into the game back in, I believe it was 2007. It might have been 2006, but I think it was early 2007. And back then, because this DDO was originally released with the Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 rules, back when the Eberron campaign came out, DDO launched. It was a big thing. The 3.5 rules were supposed to revivify it. They turned out to be very popular rules, but not that long after, and I don't have this off the top of my head, when they released 4.0, 4.0 was a disaster. Nobody really liked it. And then they rebranded it and redid it and came up with the 5.0 rules, which everyone loves. 5.5e, I think they are now. Dungeons and Dragons is the most popular rule set of all time. Everyone who plays it loves it. And so what we have seen in Dungeons and Dragons is an amalgam of the original 3.5 rules, things from the 4.0 rules and the 5e rules. And so the reason I mention all that is Drow in the 3.5 rules are level adjusted. So what does that mean? Well, the people who wrote the rules figured that any player character who played a Drow would be so powerful right off the bat. They were level adjusted, and I believe it was 2.5 or 3 levels. So what that means is, in order to have an equivalent normal, let's say human character, your Drow is level 1, the equivalent would be a human level 3. And so the Drow therefore suffered a deficit. When you made the Drow at level 1, it took you all that much more time to get to level 2, which they considered equivalent to a level 5 or whatever it was. It was really complicated. The whole level adjusting thing that was never really popular. The way that they put it into DDO was you had to unlock the Drow with favor. And then they were super powerful, but in order to level adjust them, they made it so that you could never have a 36-point build Drow. So even now, to this day, 13 years later, you cannot have a 36-point Drow. And that is because they are 28 points. It doesn't matter if you have 32-point build unlocked. When you make a Drow, you are stuck at 28 ability points. And if you TR and then TR, instead of going to 36 like every other race, you go to 32. So what does that mean? Well, they are at a huge deficit, especially considering if you look at the racial enhancements, they are nothing like what you see in Dragonborn, Deep Gnome, Tiefling, Aasimar, you name it. Any new race, they redid the human, the dwarf, the halfling some time ago, regular gnomes, and then if you look at the epics, the half elf, the half orc, I mean, it's just the Drow are the worst. Elves, and whether it's a wood elf or a Corvair elf, they are superior. You can make them 36 points, and they have much better racials. Not that the Drow have terrible. I mean, this Fairy Fire is good. This Dark Fire is fantastic if you can put it into a build. They have some DPS here. They have the Arcane Fluidity, which is really good. And then every time they level up, they get more stacking spell resistance, which is great. But what I think that SSG should do is keep this, because the core is fine, but make this area here, maybe keep these 2 SLAs, but make this a little bit more like the Deep Gnome, give them some more magical stuff, and then remove the level adjusting completely from the game. That is archaic. They don't do that in 4.0, and they don't do it in 5e. 5e now, which is where we get the Dragonborn, and the way that they implemented our Tieflings, they're just much more powerful, and they just don't care about level adjusting now. I mean, I spoke about this in a previous video where Tieflings come out of the box immune to fear, and that is more OP than anything. And so when I go over my list of the top 3 races, well, there's one right there, Tiefling. Tiefling is a solid choice. And so I have the list of races in front of me. There is a new shifter, and then the Razor Claw shifter. I haven't had a lot of time to play around with it, although I did log into Lamania and put some hours into running around on it. But overall, I didn't think it was super powerful. There may be some things about it that I don't know for hardcore that might be optimized, but I'm going to stick with the recommendations that I've seen. Now, we may learn in Hardcore Season 4 that There's a new combo there's a flavor of the month every month for builds, and races come in and out of popularity. But I have to tell you, I'll give you my top 3 races, and then I'll give you my top 3 classes. And I would say that the race that comes in number 1, the number 1 race, I'll give it to you right away. I'm not going to make you wait. Is Warforged. Warforged, hands down, is probably the best race you can play on the hardcore league, and that is because they are constructs, and they are sentient constructs, and they get a bonus to Constitution, which means that you have more hit points, and they have a built-in set of immunities as a result of being a construct. And I told you in yesterday's video, immunities are tier 1 gold standard. You want these on every character. They will keep you alive. They will protect you. Hardcore League can be brutal. You need every advantage you can get. Any immunity that you can get, that tier 1 gold standard for your character, you want it. And though you can go out and get these immunities on other characters with gear, the Warforged comes out of the box with them. So not only do you get the +2 Constitution, but you get immunity to sleep, immunity to hold person. That means that you cannot be held. That's huge. Talk to people who've died on Hardcore League. You'll hear that they got held by a Hobgoblin cleric and killed by the Hobgoblin assassin that came out and knocked you while you had the blue rings of hold around you. No, you can't hold a Warforged. They're immune. Completely 100% immune. The next thing that they're immune to is nausea. They cannot be nauseated, so you don't get any penalties for the troglodyte stench that makes every other race nauseous. Warforged laugh it off and walk right through that crap. Exhaustion. They are immune to exhaustion. They are immune to paralyze. So ghouls have a paralyzing touch. If you get hit with a ghoul or a ghast, the undead. Warforged are immune to it. And Warforged are 100% full tier 1 gold standard immunity out of the box, immune to energy drain. Energy drain is so deadly. You can be energy drained to death by a beholder when you're level 8 and you're running around in the first time that you come across a beholder. You not only can get disintegrated, but you can get energy drained into oblivion. So the fact that you can, out of the box, make a character that is immune to being held and immune to energy drain is unbelievable. They have many other things, but 2 other immunities that they have that we talked about yesterday is that they are out of the box naturally. They have a proof against poison and a proof against disease, immunity to natural poison and natural disease. Straight up, it is unbelievable how powerful Warforged are for the Hardcore League because of these immunities. Now, you can get immunity to energy drain on your character, but what I'm thinking of the first time I can get it on this Drow is in epics. Now there might be some gear that I'm not thinking of, but I know that in my epic destinies, if I go into Shadow Dancer, I can get an immunity to energy drain. Poison and disease, I have to wear items to get my proof against poison, my proof against disease. Nausea, exhaustion, paralysis, well again, I have to wear items to take care of those. And immunity to sleep, well, I am an elf, and elves are, that's a racial, we are as an elf immune to sleep. But considering that the Warforged are not level adjusted, you can make them 36 points. It's pretty unbelievable. They also get a racial bonus versus saving throws versus magical poisons, magical diseases, and they do not fail a save versus those on a 1. So it makes them much stronger. Now, it doesn't say here supernatural poisons or supernatural diseases. However, though, if you made a blade forged, which is a paladin, remember paladins are immune, 100% tier 1 gold standard immune to all disease, whether it's magical, supernatural, or natural. The other thing about Warforged is that they are immune to any spell that is targeted to a humanoid, and they are immune to any sort of damage from drowning. They cannot drown. They don't get an oxygen bar when they go underwater. So you can just run into water. You can stay underwater. You could go underwater and go away and cook a meal and go to school and come back, and your Warforged is fine. Any other class is alive. They breathe. They have to have an underwater action item, which we crafted yesterday for my character. But Warforged out of the box get this. And that's not all. They also have the ability, based on how they are created, they can choose an armor plating for themselves. It's made out of wood and metal and other things. And you can pick it so it is like light armor. This is like no armor, light armor, or heavy armor. And the fortification you get goes up the more you use. I think they call it, there's nothing, then I think mithril body would be light armor, and then adamantine body is heavy armor. And then you get, so what that means is, if you made a melee with adamantine body, or if you made a caster, well, you get that fortitude, you get the, I'm blanking out what the term is here, fortification right away. So you see, I have 75% fortification, but that comes from a combination of my Warlock and an item that I'm wearing. Whereas Warforged would get that just as a racial. They get fortification as a racial. They don't get 100%, but they get bonuses towards it. They get a stacking bonus. And reading here, it's a special stacking feat that gives them 25% per every time they take advantage of that. The one downside is that divine healing doesn't heal them for all, but you can take something called Healer's Friend that will allow you to get more from divine healing. From my understanding of it is lay hands works on them, and the repair spells work on them. So they are just a fantastic. They don't wear armor because they pick their armor slot when you make your character either nothing, mithril, or adamantine. But you do get to slot these docents, and a docent is sort of like a little gem that slots into their chest. The lore of that is it is a remnant from the Warforged when they were created by the Quarry for the war, when the Quarry invaded Eberron and were trying to wipe out the giants. They made Warforged, and the Quarry are these they come from the realm of dreams. They are these sort of ethereal creatures, and they use the docent as sort of like a place to dwell, I guess, if you can think of it like that. But docents now, for our purposes, just give you different bonuses and stuff like that. They can be many different. They get a negative wisdom, negative charisma, so you wouldn't necessarily want to make, for example, a warlock, because a charisma-based warlock. You could make a constitution-based warlock if you went and made like a Sonic warlock, a Fey Pact warlock, tank, an Enlightened Spirit tank. They would be a good choice for that. Because the wisdom is low, they're not a great choice for clerics. Out of the box, they're not a good choice for a paladin, but on the hardcore league, you can play iconics as a normal at level 1, and so you could make a Blade Forged if you have access to Blade Forged. If you purchase it, believe you have to purchase them, but they are equally as powerful, and they have more. So Blade Forged are a slightly better version of the Warforged. So either of those two is my number one. A couple of people I know play Warforged exclusively. I think if anybody watches Nimvin's stream, he plays on the hardcore, and I believe that he only plays a Warforged. He might correct me, but I've only seen him on a Warforged, so maybe he has another tune that I don't know. And then the number 2 race for the hardcore league, in my opinion, is the Tiefling. And the Tiefling, either the Tiefling or the Scoundrel. Why is that? Because of what we talked about, the tier 1 gold standard immunity to fear right out of the box. You are immune. You are completely immune to scare, fear, phantasmal killer, any death effects that have to do with fear, any illusion effects. You are completely immune to anything that you would have to roll a saving throw from a fear spell or a fear effect. You're immune. That is also that goes along with the Tiefling's amazing racial traits. They get +2 charisma. They get bonuses to search, spot, and balance. They get bonus saves versus spells. They get bonuses to hit outsiders. And they also get an infernal ancestry feat, which basically grants them every level that they go up, they get fire resistance equal to their character level. So if I were on a Tiefling right now, my native fire resistance would be 7 because I'm level 7, and that would stack with all other sources. So we can see here my fire resist on this character comes from the guild buffs, and it is 5. If I were a Tiefling, it would be 5 + 7. And then anything else that I did, if I cast this spell on me, that would be 25 + 7. So, it is a very helpful to have a built-in fire immunity, because most of the game up until about level 15-ish, and even after that, fire resistance is so useful because there's lava. There's monsters that throw fireballs. There's fire elementals. There's fire methods. Fire is everywhere. And so having a resistance to fire is key. As a matter of fact, when I was in the old game, back when the level cap was level 10, my cloak was a +20 fire resist cloak. And that used to cover me from just about anything. I used to be able to swim in lava and run around. Now, the game has changed a little bit, but you can find lava just about anywhere. And so it's useful, very useful, especially in the lower levels, to have fire resistance. So Tieflings, fantastic. They get that infernal ancestry. It also gives them bonuses to spellcraft. And if you look in the core, every time you level up as a Tiefling, you gain fire damage on your attacks, on your melee attacks. I'm not sure if that counts for ranged attacks. I think it's only melee, but the point is you get extra damage, and that counts if you are a spellcaster. So for me, Tiefling actually would have been a great choice as a Fiend packed Warlock, because I'm doing fire damage. Tieflings get bonus spell power for fire, and I also get the if I were in Enlightened Spirit swinging my weapon, I would get bonus fire damage on every hit. The only downside is there's a lot of fire monsters, like we just talked about. So things can be completely immune to fire. But the other great thing that the Tiefling has is part of its racial ability. It has an SLA that you can take that will allow you to bypass fire immunity on a monster, and that is called I'm looking for it here. Improved Scorch, I believe. When you cast on a creature that's immune to fire, you make them vulnerable to that element for a short time. So you bypass the bane of most casters in DDO, low-level casters, that, for sorcerers, they have to hit level 20 in order to get this ability. But you, as a tiefling, if you put points into your racial tree, can have access to a debuff that will make a fire elemental take fire damage. I mean, that is fantastic. So that makes that my number 2 choice. And then my number 3 choice for the best race in the Hardcore League event is probably human. It's a mix between human and Dragonborn. And the reason I say that is because humans get an extra feat, and they get bonus skill points, and they also have a very good, solid progression. They get +4 skill points, +1 skill point every level after level 1, +1 bonus feat. They have access to dragon marks. They don't get any natural immunities, but they do have access to be able to cast heroism. They have access to enhanced healing amplification. They have skill boost, attack boost, defense boost, save boosts, power boosts. They get to pick through adaptability what ability score they want to go up. Whereas I'm on a Drow, I can only really go up in my charisma. They can pick through of any of the abilities they can go up in. So humans, fantastic. If you're wondering what class to make, what race to make, what class to make, and you don't want to make a Warforged for some reason, and you don't like the Tiefling, although I don't know how you don't like the horns, human is the next best. And then I also said Dragonborn, and I'll tell you why. Dragonborn also get the stacking racial every time they level up, a resistant. You pick your ancestry. So if I make a Dragonborn fire, my ancestry is red dragon. Every time I level up, I get 1 fire resist. And so I can, exactly like the Tiefling, at level 7, I would have a 7 stacking fire resist. And then also, they get bonuses +2 to strength, +2 to charisma. They are not level adjusted, so you can go to 36 points. They get a breath weapon that anybody can have access to. And they also get racial hit points. So if you put points in your racial tree, you can have access to hit points. And we already talked about how important hit points are for DDO. And now on to what I think are the top 3 classes to play during the Hardcore League season. Overall for survivability. Now, before I give you my top 3 classes, let me go over a very important point. I think that it's very important for you to play whatever you think you play well. Can't say it any clearer than that. You don't want to go onto DDO.com, look through StrimTom's builds, pick the one that he likes, log in and play it, and you don't like it. But you're playing it because you like him, you like the build, you like the concept, but you don't jive with it. You know what I mean? There will be something, whether you played Dungeons and Dragons as a kid, or whether you've watched movies or Lord of the Rings, you related to Legolas or Gimli, or maybe you felt like you were a hobbit, and you want to play a halfling. Like, you got to honor that stuff in you. What is it that makes you excited about playing, and then play that? Can't say it any simpler. I personally like playing casters. I personally like sorcerer, warlock, wizard, and I think that I play them well. I am not a fan of melee, although I have a modified. My baby bear build is a druid, barbarian, artificer, and she runs around in bear form, claw, claw, bite, and she's, holding a two-handed sword. I like that, but, I do 14 levels of druid, and so she is, in the core, a druid caster running around as a bear. I mean, she casts a lot, and even though her melee damage is significantly all of her damage, being a bear is a little bit different than, running around, let's say, as a two-handed barbarian or a paladin. Or that's not to say that they aren't fantastic. I'm just saying, for me, I generally would be much more likely to play a sorcerer than I would to be a barbarian. But this hardcore is about, taking what you like and doing the best you can and trying to optimize, So even though I like Sorks, it would have been way better for me to have made, instead of a Drow, a Warlock, a Warforged tank Fey Warlock or something like that. But I decided to stick with the build that I did my Reaper on, and for the purposes of this video series and anything. So, take what I say with a grain of salt. I might tell you the top 3 that I think are the best, and you don't like any of them. Then I would say play what it is that you like. If you think you can do good at it, what races I think would work the best if you can fit one of those in. But, that's just an opinion. You may win the event. As a matter of fact, I think I'm trying to remember what Zuzu was. He won the Reaper. I believe he was a gnome, and he was an inquisitive rogue, I believe. Would I tell you to play a gnome inquisitive rogue? I wouldn't know, because I would not, unless you told me that you played it really well. He plays it really well. So, that's one example. So, to keep on track, I believe that the number one class for the hardcore league is, hands down, no contest, Artificer. You might say, hey, that's not what I expected to hear. Or maybe you're like, yeah, who didn't know that? I log in and I see half the population is Artificer. Well, I'll tell you something. Artificer is one of those classes that if you know how to build it, it will be the best. If you just play Artificer out of the box and you take a repeater and your rune arm and your dog, your metal robot dog, and you run around and you're not sort of looking at the different trees and trying to optimize what really good things are in those trees, you're going to have a hard time, because rune arms kind of are not that good. I mean, they are good, but they're not that good. And it's a tricky balance with getting a rune arm to be effective. You have to farm for a good one. It might be difficult for you to find a good one. And then, even that, they're kind of hard to aim. So some people are really good at it. I'm not very good at using the rune arms. The other thing, too, is if you use repeaters. Repeaters own the game when you're low level. Below level 10, repeating crossbows are fantastic. But once you get above level 10, their damage really tapers off. I mean, it drops off a cliff. And the other problem you have is it is single target. So if you walk into a room and there's 20 mobs and you're single targeting them all, you are going to have to love kiting and running around and healing. So I usually recommend that you go from, as an artificer, if you own it, if you have the ability to do the inquisitive tree, that you switch eventually from the repeating crossbows and you go into the inquisitive and you use the light or heavy crossbow and you get the bonus from the inquisitive. The other thing too is that artificers make solid melee when you do the renegade master maker. You get in that particular tree very good, very solid self-healing. You get access to a cast of reconstruct. You have the ability also as an artificer to cast with no fail reconstruct scrolls and repair wands, and you can drink repair potions. So artificers become very powerful self-healers if you are a Warforged. Now, if you make an artificer that's like a human, that's still good, but it's not as good as if you made it a Warforged because of all the built-in self-healing. An artificer has access to use magic device, so you could do an artificer that is a human or an artificer that is a tiefling, and you would still be able to wand cast, drink potions, much like I am on this drow. And later on you could use heal scrolls, but we're talking about what's the best, and the best is for you to be a Warforged artificer. And you can look at various builds on the DDO, whether you like melee or whether you like ranged, what you have access to, what loot you get, what you want to do. But I think overall, that would give you the best sort of a beginner's luck type of a start. Because keep in mind, even though artificers do not get sort of rogue abilities when it comes to avoiding traps, they still can trap, and they trap as good as rogues. So you can search and spot and disable all the traps as an artificer, as long as you put the points into your skills. So I've talked about it in video 1. The number one killer of all players in Hardcore League are traps. As an artificer, you would have a solution for that. As a Warforged, you would have all those tier 1 immunities. As an artificer, you have the ability to range, the ability to melee, access to self-healing. It's just an all-around great combination. So that is my number 1. Number 2, what's the number 2 class for Hardcore League? I would have to say, based on what I've seen, the number 2 is probably Favored Soul. Favored Soul is one of those very powerful classes that gets a huge bonus to hit points and spell points, but you're going to want to take the bonus to hit points. Whether you go Charisma or whether you go Wisdom, that's up to you and the build that you're playing. But they do have access to some very powerful spells, Sunbolt, and they are just fantastic at surviving. You can get in the various trees all sorts of goodies. They get great saving throws. They get energy absorptions. They get the Grace of Battle, which gives them, whatever you pick, Wisdom or Charisma, bonus to hit. Your Faith allows you to get to hit and to damage with your favored weapon. And so, I mean, that's huge. So whether you decide to do a spellcaster Favored Soul or a melee Favored Soul, and whichever tree you were in, whether it is the Angel of Vengeance, the Beacon of Hope, or the War Soul, they are just a solid choice. You will see lots of Favored Souls on the Hardcore League, and for good reason. I mean, they are just a solid excellent choice for a class to play in this event, and any race too. I mean, I ideally would want to pick, if you were going wisdom, in a class that can get an 18 or a 20 wisdom, and if you were going charisma, you would want to pick a class that can do an 18 or a 20 charisma. And then the next, my third, and this one is sort of a very difficult, I'm not sure that I can sort of whittle this down to one, but I would say based on what I've seen, I would probably have to say Barbarian is the number 3 best class for Hardcore League. And why is that? Well, I'll tell you, it's one very simple thing, and that is Blood Tribute. If you don't know what Barbarian Blood Tribute is, oh my god. So, Barbarians already get the most hit points. Every time they level up, they get a D12. No other class gets a D12. Barbarians get a D12. They have bonuses to jump. They have bonuses to swim. They get bonuses to intimidate. And they have 3 different trees: Frenzied Berserker, Occult Slayer, and Ravager, and they all do slightly different things. One is a little bit more defensive, one is a little bit more DPS, and then one is just kind of out there. And Blood Tribute, basically, when you put points into it, allows you to spend 1 constitution point to get temporary hit points equal to the amount of points that you put into the skill. There's 3 levels of it, so 50, 100, or 150 temporary hit points. For 1 constitution point, you'll see a little marker up in the top corner. So if Platinum were a Barbarian and I hit Blood Tribute, you would see a little hand with a knife in it, and it would give you a counter how many times you've used Blood Tribute. You can only use it, so I would have 16 uses before I would be out, and I believe, I have not done this, but I believe if you did use it 16 times and your constitution went to 0, you would die, because you can't have a 0 constitution. In Hardcore League, you will see death messages pop up that say so-and-so died from something not equaling his hit points or whatever. That's basically a Blood Tribute. Barbarian got knocked out and his or temporary hit points are wearing off, and then they die, or when the Barbarian was enraged. The Barbarian rages, and then when they come out of the rage, the fatigue, their constitution goes down, and they die. But that's another thing, that Barbarians can rage. Barbarians get damage reduction. Barbarians get trap sense. Barbarians have the fastest movement, other than monks. They get a plus 10% stacking movement bonus. And so, I mean, Barbarians are solid. It's not like the damage reduction that you can eventually get up to, I believe it's 10 or 11%, somewhere around there. You may be able to even get it higher. I'm sure there are Barbarian experts out there who can tell me all the things about Barbarians that I don't know. But, you're getting, let's say you get 5% Barbarian damage reduction. Well, that's 5% of every hit. 1 point out of every 20. That doesn't sound like a lot, but any bit of help that you can get is good. You would be able to stack. So, as a matter of fact, I think I told you about a friend of mine who soloed the Demon Assault quest at level 10, and that is a level 18 elite quest. He did that on a Barbarian Druid. He was mostly Barbarian, and he had spec'd into Druid enough to allow him to play as a bear. And he was able to do Devil Assault with Blood Tribute. He was a 2-handed fighter, so he was doing a lot of damage in bear form. And on the Hardcore League server, you will see a lot of Druid bears. They are very powerful. If you are on the Druid side of things, you get access to a lot of spells. If you go the Barbarian Fighter Druid Bear mix, that's also a very powerful. I would say check the forums, look at the builds people are posting. A lot of the other YouTube guys, the Twitch streamers, have opinions on what is the flavor of the month build, what works best based on the current. We are now in the Feywild, and my recommendations may be completely irrelevant now because there's some new flavor of the month. However, having said what I said, you would not feel at a deficit if you made a Warforged Barbarian or a Tiefling Favored Soul. I mean, you know, these recommendations that I'm telling you are solid, good advice for the Hardcore League. Now, as I started saying, you can really play anything if you look at the favor, at the leaderboards, who did what with what character. You'll see a very solid mix of all sorts of different things. On Hardcore League, you'll see a lot of splash builds. So you'll see many thrower bards. You'll see inquisitive rogue rangers. You'll see all sorts of mix. You'll see, I even remember seeing like a wizard warlock undead. This was before they put the undead warlock in. A two-handed fighter. So yeah, and since I gave you an extra race, I will say here that if I were to pick a fourth and sort of give you a fourth class that I think is very solid for the Hardcore League event, I would say it's Paladin. The Paladin, right off the bat, out of the box at level 1, is a solid melee. You could make it into a ranged if you did inquisitive, or if you wanted to mix it. Keep in mind you have to be lawful good in order to be a Paladin, and so you don't have access to other... you couldn't be a Paladin Barbarian, for example, because... barbarians have to be chaotic, but you do get access to some very powerful trees: Sacred Defender, Knight of the Chalice, and Vanguard. And I know Knight of the Chalice was redone recently, and supposedly the damage is a lot better. Level 1, you get great saves, you get a smite, you get an aura of good, you get divine grace, lay hands at level 2, you get fear immunity and divine health at level 3, and divine health at level 3, that's where they hit the tier 1. Not only are you immune to fear, but you get divine health, which is a paladin straight up immunity to every single disease. There is no disease that can touch a paladin. That's one of their holy abilities, I guess you could say. So they are a solid choice for the Hardcore League. And then there's other, if I were to give you what do I think is the worst, I told you the worst race, Drow. Hands down, Drow is the worst race. You only make them if you're crazy or weird or a nerd like me who, does it for flavor. There's nothing wrong with that. Flavor builds are fantastic. And, nobody is going to come to your house and take your computer away because you died on the Hardcore League. Like, it's okay. It's, have fun. It's a video game. You want to enjoy yourself. So do whatever it is that will make you happy. It's not a contest either that beyond the leaderboards for the actual event, nobody's gauging how fast you're going. Nobody cares how many deaths you have. Nobody cares. And the other thing is too, do you know who won the Hardcore League Season 1? Do you know who the number 2 guy for Hardcore Season 2 was? Nobody cares. Only the people who know are the people who did it. So, You know, the guy who came in number one knows he was number one. Nobody else probably knows who it is. Although, I think Zuzu now won. I think it was his. It's definitely his second win of everything. I'm not sure where he landed. I think he was the number one on his server on the leaderboards. So I'm level 7 and I've been doing level 3 quests. I have some. I still don't have a trinket. I picked up a Cloak of Wisdom, which I don't really need, but it gives me a slightly better will save. I did pick up a pair of gloves. These are the tattered gloves that give me a 12% for my fire spell crit, which is great as a fiend warlock. This is the same. This is the same. Same. All these are the same. This is new. This is a great ring that comes out of one of this gatekeeper quest line earlier. It replaced a ring that I had that had 5 spell resistance on it, but I get another mythic ring boost and I get a +2 intelligence, which I don't really need, but if I had to hit a lever, an intelligence rune, 16 is a high enough number that should allow me to. And so I thought that we would run this quest here because I know that this quest has a bunch of different possible roads in it, and what I'll show you how I run it that I think is the safest. You may disagree with me, but I will show you what I think is the safest.
As you step inside the hut, you suddenly feel disoriented. Which way is down again? One of the hags notices your presence.
Would you look at that? More adventurers. I don't
I'll
remember
wait to cast this because it's very expensive.
Another hag responds.
Stop thinking with your gut, bitch.
Now I do have a companion I can take out if I need it. That's the Feywild Muse, but I'm not going to use it because, like I said, I don't want to use anything that the average person doesn't have access to. I could have also went out and bought a companion, and companions are an interesting thing. You will be a much better DDO player if you don't use companions. That's just a flat-out truth. You'll get way better at playing your class and your character race if you try to keep yourself healed, especially in elite content. It's not like Reaper where you suffer the deficit healing. But in Hardcore League, where you want every advantage, I think if you can afford...
More flies stuck in the jam. Welcome to hell,
if you can afford to get them, then I would use hirelings. Now, I always talk to this guy. He's the tallest, if you're wondering. Fell, Shatter Tusk. You can, each of these 4 have a different quest that you have to do. And I will talk to him until he allows me to help him. There, and so now I can enter his little dream world and help sort him out. Now I will use this here. I will also give myself some more hit points, and you can see in this tree here I was able to get the tier 3 for so now I have plus 25 bonus hit points.
Keep having this dream, says that.
Now this is I like to do this way because this is just a pretty straightforward fight. And so if you're with a group and you have DPS, you can see that I'm not standing still for any of these guys. There's a champion. I'm just going to basically kite around and do what in the PvP world they call circle boxing. If you don't know what that is, maybe that's a good thing because it means that maybe you didn't PvP a lot. But you know, when if you're PvPing a player character and you want to move around to maybe LOS them or break their line of sight, you know, you can do what's called circle boxing. You just basically make a box around them, but I'm not doing it around one mob. I'm actually circle boxing the entire field here, you can see, and I'm still hitting him, but I'm basically using him like a focal point, like an orbit. Like I'm a planet and he is like a sun or something that I'm orbiting around, and I will just keep moving and just keep switching the orbit point till, you know, so there's another one there. This is a great one right here, this champion. I will just do my best to orbit him, and meanwhile I'm AoEing everybody else.
I get frustrated sometimes.
I have to be careful in here because, you know, like by myself, this guy is a champion. He's probably going to hit me very hard. I want to get my blur on and just keep moving. He is now the object that I'm orbiting around. I'm using all of my tier 3 survivable defensives here. I'm strafing, I'm jumping, I'm changing my axis back, forth, front, back constantly. And I'm not giving these guys basically a chance to get near me. Now that doesn't always work, but for this fight it worked pretty well. If you were melee, you could do the same thing. If you're ranged, you can do the same thing. Just constantly have to jump, move, and keep picking targets and circling around one. Now, I don't need to do this because as a Warlock, it's not like I'm going to go into this fight and cast, but it's always a good idea because I know that this is going to be the last fight. This is why I like to do this way, because I just did this. It was a fight. I'm going to leave this, and now I'm going to ignore everybody else.
Your soul isn't all transparent like mine.
Wait here, and a crack in the bag will open up, and I'll be able to leave. I won't get all the bonuses, but I will be able to skip all of these other hard fights. So here's the rip in the seam that I was looking for. Time to get out of here. I want to make sure that I'm going into the last fight. I throw my important buffs on me. Give me hit points, give me jump, because I probably will circle box these guys. And then I need to basically, I know that one of them heals the other one. Look, they are hitting me with Dispel Magic, and they just hit me with a poison spell. But that's okay. I'm just going to keep DPSing until I can get one of them to go away. I'm going to LOS them and heal behind this pole here, and then come back out and fight. Remember, we're using the environment. I am going to, just for giggles, use this potion. Now I'm immune to poison. You can see I got ability damage. I will cure it. Oh, I have a lot of ability damage. There it is, it's gone. But the fight's over. I didn't get any good loot. It's a cheap reroll, but I am in the small minority that doesn't believe you should have to pay to get loot out of a chest that you just earned by questing. So I never reroll, but a lot of people do. So I just loot it. I don't have the shards anyway, but you know, I would not. To me, that's very, very Bush League cheese ball. You know, SSG could elevate the class of their game a little bit by getting rid of that ridiculous pay to win. But anyway, Not going to get on a soapbox. We're here to have fun. So if you want to roll the chest 5 times, I think the maximum you can roll it is 5 times. That's your prerogative. You can do that. That's the great thing about it. You can do it. And likely if you did, you would get a piece of named gear, which is fantastic. That, you know, that's, if you can afford it, if you want to do it, go for it. So now I did all these quests. We just did the last one. I'll turn them all in. See if we got anything useful. These death block dodge bracers are fantastic, so I'm going to take them. We've already talked about why I like death block and dodge. This is a good robe, an upgrade with spell resistance 6 and healing amp. But this belt with false life 14 wins because false life is a tier 2 defense with the 14 extra hit points, along with spell resistance, which is also a tier 2 defense. So there we go. That's an easy no-brainer. I was watching one of the other streamers' videos and learned that right now the loot in DDO is bugged, so any items that have a slot, you won't see the slot until you log in. So what I've been doing is I could close this, log off, log back on, then reopen it, and I would see the slots. But I'm on the hardcore server by myself. I'm not going to work crafting. I'm not going to be selling anything on the auction house. So I'm just not going to worry about it. And if I get a slot, that's great. If I don't, then that's that. It looks like the best thing I can take for myself are these. And then here, anything in here? Looks like I'll just take the most expensive item, which is 2,000 platinum, and I will sell it later. I have been looking for a good cloak, but I haven't found one. And again, I will take the most expensive item, which is 2,400. And he should give me an item as well. And this is all level 1 stuff. Not very valuable, but I'll take the most valuable item. So you can see I only have a few level 3 quests left to do. I still have to do some of the catacombs. I have to do Kobold Assault. And then I move on to level 4. I also have to do the Swiped Signet. But I did everything before that. Catacombs isn't that bad. It can be with the shadows. You have to be careful. You have to have lesser restoration potions, especially if you're alone, because they strength drain you, and you can become helpless very quick when you fight the shadows. Most everything else in there's a lot of spellcaster whites, and you know, you want to be careful. Use a hireling if you're by yourself. I also have Red Fang, and Red Fang has a lot of traps, so I have been looking for a poison protection item before I do that, because I don't have an ability to disable traps, but I have not found one, so I likely will save that to last, and then if I have to, I'll just run it. But I would like to have a poison immunity item before I go in there, because there's not only poison spiders, but there's poison traps. There's just poison everywhere. So that's it. I'm going to wrap up this video, and I will be making more I'm not sure what the topic for the next one will be, but I'll post that. And in the meantime, I hope adventures go well, and I'll catch you guys next time. Join us for more. I plan to do lore videos for each quest in DDO, as well as the raids. Plus, I will be releasing more Session 0 videos for DDO on topics such as player character races, the religions of Eberron, the Last War, and the Mournlands, the Dragon Marks, the Dragon Marked houses, and much, much more. Click the like button if you enjoyed this video. Comment down below. I like interacting with other players. My main tune in DDO is named Mary. I am on Sarlona. I also have a guild on the Hardcore League. My guild is Death Smile. Please say hi if you're on either of those servers. Subscribe to see more Adventure AI content about DDO, Dungeons & Dragons Online, and gaming in general. I also play Star Wars The Old Republic. You can join us at Adventure AI on Discord. Check us out on Twitch. Check us out on Twitter. You can go to our Patreon and become a patron of the channel, where you would get access to all of the scripts, the images, the music, the videos, as well as behind the scenes, and the ability to request topics for me to make future videos. Thanks very much. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope your adventures go well.